Okay, everybody.
I'm sorry.
Just about ready. Come on, Ben.
Oh, sorry. Focus.
Get with it.
Focus, Ben. Focus.
Please do. Oh, as we always begin, this is our new thing here, just to make sure that everybody can hear us. And Ben, we have a song of the day.
Oh.
Ben walks in every day singing a song very poorly every day, believe it or not. So, Ben, if you could, please recite today's song.
Recite or sing?
Oh, sing it.
When we do like a rap thing?
Yeah, sing it.
Okay. I love you, baby. Hey, baby.
All right, okay. If you're listening on the live stream, what's the name of that song? Who's the artist?
I love you, baby.
Oh, okay, we got Anthony here. He says, impeach Trump. So I guess...
Yeah, man. Impeach Trump.
Normal day here.
Yeah.
All right.
I love you, baby. Come on, everybody.
Everybody's just me, and I'm not singing along with you. All right, your Ben Joravsky show for Tuesday, October 15th. Is just... Why are you hitting your pin?
Getting ready. Getting ready.
The Ben Joravsky show for Tuesday, October 15th is just moments away. But before we get into that, we need to thank the following unions for sponsoring this program. First up, it's the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, not Aerosmith, Local 126 and District 8. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9. And the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. We love these unions. Thank you for sponsoring that program. If you're listening right now and you're in a union and you're thinking, by golly, I wish my union would sponsor this show, reach out to whoever you would reach out to about something like that and let them know that, hey, we'd love to have that union as a sponsor. Unless it's like some crazy union that, I don't know, we disagree with. And also, today's show is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. The Ben Joravsky show starts now. It is Tuesday, October 15th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, our Chicago Reader colleague Maya Dukmasova returns. Also making his return, dear friend of the Ben Joravsky Show, the one and, believe me when I say the only, Marc Sims. And Ben's Alderman is in the studio. I repeat, Ben's Alderman will be in the studio. 47th Ward Alderman Matt Martin. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here, calling this Stand Up for Teachers Tuesday. And here's why. Good weekend. Do you have a good weekend, D?
Yeah, I did. It was great. Great weekend.
But it was over, right? Yeah.
Way over.
Saw a great movie. I urge everybody to see Pain and Glory. Great flick. Run, Don't Walk. Go see it. Saw Ivy Ford. Great rock and roller. A great guitar player. Find my the next Chuck Berry. Ivy Ford. Remember that name. Watched my beloved Bulls win a basketball game. Go Bulls, go. Let me hear you. Go Bulls, go.
Only preseason.
Oh, yeah. You know what? A lot of haters out there. At bowling last night, Benji the bookie was like, yeah, Ben, but they were only playing half their players. They weren't playing their good players, meaning Toronto. Hey, I didn't see you saying that when the Bulls sat their players last week and lost to Indiana. Huh? Anyway.
By the way, call it Benji the bookie. It sounds like you're up to some shady business last night.
We're going to bring Benji on later this week. We're going to tell you all about that later. We're going to tell Dennis, Dennis, there's a package for you at the desk. And then we're going to have a sneak conversation about the Bulls.
You know I'm sitting right here.
Right. I didn't see you. Anyway, she's bringing the A game. She goes, Ben, I'm fired up. Plus, we're going to talk about her great story in today's, last week's Reader. So Maya's all fired up. And Marc Sims, the great Marc Sims, will be in the studio. He's got his own podcast. D, you were a guest on his podcast, were you not?
Yes, I was.
Yes, you were indeed. What's the name of the show? I think Marc Sims and guest. Get the name of the podcast out.
Just a few questions.
Thank
with
you.
Marc Sims.
I urge everybody to check it out. Dr. D was a guest. Mick Dumke was a guest. And a lot of good people that...
you were a guest?
I was a guest. Yes, indeed. I was a guest on the Marc Sims pod. He'll be in here. Marc has told me that he's going to come in. He's going to defend Lori Lightfoot.
Out of all the people on the show, you being a guest is what you need to promote.
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
Oh, that guy who hits the buttons. They talk to him. Yeah,
I'm not too good at self-promotion. But anyway, Marc Sims has said he's going to come in. He's going to defend Lori. How about that? All right. Hey. What's that? We need more defense of Lori Lightfoot in the fighting with the teachers. Everybody defends. And now it's funny how they're defending her. Oh, we like teachers. Even the Tribune's they're suddenly worried that they look anti-teacher. Oh, yeah, we like teachers. We just don't like teachers' unions. We just don't like Davis Gates. We don't like when teachers stand up for their rights. We don't like when teachers stand up for homelessness, for homeless kids on lower class size. But we like teachers. Okay. Yeah, as long as they shut up and take the money, that's how they like teachers. Anyway, Marc Sims will come in. He promises. He also says, that he has some Bulls talk he wants to do. All right, now I know you're disapproving of Bulls talk and sports talk in general on the show, but Marc has a few Bulls things he wants to. And the debates are tonight. All right, we get tomorrow's show. It's going to be. Oh my God, we have so many people coming in to talk about the debate. And Trump, folks. Monroe will be returning from L.A., I believe. We'll be jetting in. All right. But wait, I'm not going to talk about tomorrow's show today because that's Radio School D. But anyway, we'll talk to Marc about the debates. And Matt Martin. All right, a lot of M's in today's show. Did you notice that, D? Maya, Marc, Matt Martin. Whoa. Bring in Tom Schuba and get out the bong. Anyway, Matt Martin, Alderman of the 47th Ward, he'll be in. We're talking about the teachers, budget, and we'll talk a little debate stuff. Matt says he'll be discussing tonight's debates, Democratic debates. Democrats got to figure out. Don't forget, folks, we're heading into primary season. It's kind of been overwhelmed by all the news, but we have to decide, Democrats, who's the best choice to run against Donnie John Trump. So tonight's debate, I'll be watching, and we'll be talking all about that with Matt Martin. So plenty of good stuff, but before we do any of it, the young man from Alton, back home they call him the doctor, with the news.
And White Lightning.
I forgot that part.
No one calls me either. Regular old Tim.
White Lightning. Hey, I owe that to Gary Owen.
If you're watching on the live stream and it keeps buffering and acting weird, yeah, I don't know why. I'm looking into that as today's show goes along. All right, I got to run to Brian the Brain when we go on break to figure it out.
Brian the Brain.
But, if it does keep buffering, going in and out, we have an option. You can download the show. All right, I'll try to get it available. We don't have a bonus interview today, so I'll get it up pretty early, before 4 o'clock. So if it keeps going in and out, you want to hear today's show, just make sure to download it. All right, let's unpack the news happening in Chicago and or Illinois. Oh, by the way, Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, or wherever else you download your favorite podcast. All right, let's unpack the news happening in Chicago and or Illinois this afternoon. And as we do, we begin with the Illinois Governor, J.B. Pritzker. A quick look at Governor Pritzker's Tuesday schedule. Today, he's visiting the A. Philip Randolph Elementary School to announce the CREATE program. It's in all caps, so I'm assuming that's an acronym, but, in all caps here. Mm-hmm. CREATE promotes learning about transportation and engineering. Ben Joravsky, after our show ended Friday, and as you were chatting away with our Benny J bonus guest, Neil Muhammad, breaking news broke. We've been covering it since it happened. Illinois Senator Martin Sandoval, whose offices were raided by the FBI, and since then it's been nothing but bad news for this guy. We got subpoenas flying around left and right. We got ComEd involved now. Big shady mess. If you've been following this with us, you already know that a few of his Democratic colleagues have asked Sandoval to resign from his position as chair of the Senate Transportation Committee. And the bad news continues. One of those colleagues was Governor Pritzker himself. Well, guess what? Well, first off, documents released Friday showed that the raid of Sandoval's state capitol office is far-reaching and touches on high-profile names in clout-heavy industries, including those in the gaming arena. And State Senator Martin Sandoval announced that he tendered his resignation as chair of the Senate Transportation Committee. So long, Sandoval! But not really. And here's where our state gets that shady reputation, because Sandoval will still remain a member of the panel as it navigates its way through a sweeping capital plan for roads, bridges, and other infrastructure projects across the state. Ben Joravsky, tell us what's on your mind. Are you surprised at all by this announcement? And while we still don't know exactly what Sandoval did, is Martin Sandoval resigning some sort of an admission to guilt in all this?
I would not say that. I would never say that. And remember, in our system of government, in our system of justice, you're innocent until proven guilty. I don't know, the charges haven't been filed against the guy, right? So, no, this is not an admission of guilt. What it is bending the reality that it's not a good look to have the chairman of the Transportation Committee be under investigation by the feds. So it was, yes, he had to step down. I think it's the prudent thing to do. And by the way, Saturday's Sun-Times had the full story laid. I don't know if you saw that, but a great job by my beloved Bright One. They had all the different theories. Bob Hergith and Marc Brown, and they had like 4 reporters working on that baby. Had all the different theories as to what the feds are investigating. It's like a puzzle because the information that they have available only gives them bits and pieces. It's redacted subpoenas, so they're trying to figure out by reading through the redactions what exactly the feds are looking into. So it's not clear at all. But one thing is clear. It has something to do with conversations that took place in a cigar lounge in the southwest suburbs. We talked about that with Bob Hergith last week. It's my funny little detail. They're smoking cigars in the back room of some lounge. But yeah, it's not an admission of guilt. What it is bending to. It's just the pragmatic thing to do. The guy's under investigation. He should not be the upfront man on overseeing, the contracts, what have you, the approval of contracts for.
Do you think he should still remain a member of the panel?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, yeah, why not? He's still a state senator. He's not going to step down from a state senate. I mean, it's an investigation. We don't even know what they're investigating. So, yeah, no, it's. Listen, Donnie Trump's under investigation. I don't see him stepping down. I'll tell you.
Fair point.
You know what? I'm going to make one of my famous deals. I will cut a deal, Republicans. Hey, Tribune, pay attention. Tribune's all fired up over Sandoval.
Oh, they listen every day.
Tribune's all fired up over Sandoval. They're so outraged at Sandoval. Meanwhile, they're not quite sure about Trump. Well, the conversation with the Ukrainian president was wrong, but we don't see any evidence of a quid pro quo, so we're just going to pretend the whole thing didn't exist. I'll cut a deal with you. I'll encourage State Senator Martin Sandoval to step down if Donald Trump steps down. How about that? Sandoval for Trump. Is that a good deal, D? That sounds good to me, huh? All right. Donald Trump steps down. Pence steps down, too. Let's make Nancy Pelosi president. How about that? President Pelosi. Hey, I just figured it all out, D. And we'll let the Republicans replace Sandoval. We'll let the Republicans put somebody up to replace. You could, who could they put? Frank Coconati. Put Frank Coconati up. There we go. I cut a deal. Trump and Pence step down. Pelosi's the president. Sandoval steps. How about that? You think the Republicans are going to go for that, D?
For those who may be unaware, tell us all about Frank Coconati.
Frank Coconati is an old friend of mine. Used to be a Democrat, and now he loves Trump so much. He's like Trump tattoos. He's always on Facebook with Trump. He loves Trump like crazy. So he's a Trump Republican. I think fair is fair. He is. Will replace. I will agree to replace Martin Sandoval with Frank Coconati if the Tribune and the Republicans agree to replace Donald Trump with Nancy Pelosi. I think that's a fair deal.
Coconati, come on the program. We have a live stream. It works sometimes. Come on in. Show us that tattoo.
Right. Remember the last time he was on the show? He's like threatening to fight.
The first time is also the last time.
He's threatening to fight. Hey, come on. Let's step outside. Anyway.
All right, enough about that. Let's move on to the Chicago news. And hey, if you couldn't tell by Ben's words in the opening, the answer is yes. There is still a Chicago teacher strike looming, and we have updates on that. Only 2 days left for the Chicago Teachers Union and the city to work out a deal. On Friday, the CTU rejected a new proposal from Mayor Lori Lightfoot, a proposal that did not budge on many key union demands. The following comes from the Chicago Sun-Times. After the city and union met for nearly 8 hours Friday, both sides came out firing with attacks that escalated tensions with the CTU set to strike on Thursday. The contentious bargaining session also appeared to douse some of the growing optimism behind closed doors that a deal could be made in the coming days. Ben Joravsky, 2 days left until the teacher strike. And aside from the obvious question, do you think we will see a teacher strike come Thursday? I'll ask you one more. Do you think Mayor Lori Lightfoot has reached out to our bicycle-riding, Joe Biden-loving previous mayor, one Rahm Emanuel, for advice on all this? And if so, how did that conversation go?
Well, if it happened, he said, I'm smart and you're not.
Okay, all right.
I certainly hope she didn't reach out. I wouldn't be surprised if she did. By the way, he rode a bike. Do you know where he rode to?
Yeah, he rode a bike somewhere.
Okay, you don't know. Okay, okay. All right, forget that gag. I hope she didn't, because Rahm Emanuel is not somebody I would want any mayor to emulate when it comes to dealing with the Chicago teachers. I will say this, Lori Lightfoot seems to be trying to read from the non-Rahm playbook. Everything she's doing is non-Rahm, and that just goes to show you how much things have changed since 2012. In 2012, Rahm rode into office. Get the pun? Rode into office on the wave of the...
I just biked around Lake Michigan.
Oh, thank you, Rahm. Just thanks for that clarification. And I don't know, how many miles was it?
Nearly 1,000 miles.
Wow, thank you. I appreciate that, Rahm, for the clarification. It's always good to know when Rahm's listening. He weighs in. Anyway, Mayor Rahm in 2012 was drinking that school reform Kool-Aid and decided it was a good idea to come into office and wage war against the teachers, tell the president of the Teachers Union, Karen Lewis, to go beep herself. And that beep begins with an F, but I will not say it because I do not swear on the Ben Joravsky Show, even though it's a podcast. And so he thought that was a good idea. It kind of went against him when he discovered, much to his dismay, that most people in the city of Chicago like teachers more than they like him. All right. He was, but by the way, I got to tell you one more time, I love my media people as much as anyone, but they were all on the side of Rahm in 2012, D. Let's not rewrite history, okay? It's pretty lonely back in 2012 as well. So Lori's going a different way. She's saying how much she loves teachers and respects teachers and, loves the teachers union. Miguel Del Valle, the president of the school board, her appointed president of the school board, he loves teachers. And even the Tribune weighed in today. They love teachers. Everybody loves teachers now. So the one thing they seem to have learned from 2012 is you got to say you love teachers. All right. See, that's the new rhetoric of the day. I love teachers. And even Bruce Rauner loves teachers. He says, yay for our teachers all the time. So it seems as though Lori...
Yay for our teachers! Yeah. Yay for our teachers!
Thank you, Bruce Rauner. But Lori Lightfoot is determined not to be like Rahm when it comes to dealing with the Chicago Teachers Union. But she does not want to agree to the very sensible recommendations that the Teachers Union is making, and having to do with lowering class size and adding nurses and social workers to the classrooms. Now, I don't know why a liberal mayor of a liberal city would not immediately agree to lower class size. Oh, wait, I do know, because that means obligating the city to spend money on teachers. So people love teachers. They just don't want to hire more teachers. You got that, D? All right. So it's confusing. I know.
Life's hard.
Yeah, life is hard. So I hope Lori Lightfoot is not reaching out to Rahm, because whatever advice Rahm has to give is not going to be very helpful.
All right, another Lightfoot news. This comes from the Sun-Times, and quite possibly the most laid-back and chill guest we've ever had on this program. Ben calls him the reefer writer, Tom Schuba.
Oh, yeah. Tommy Schuba. He's on the show on Friday. He did a great job, by the way.
Facing pressure from residents and aldermen alike, Mayor Lori Lightfoot on Monday announced a scaled-back version of her much-maligned plan to prohibit recreational pot sales, marijuana, in most of the downtown area. Lightfoot's office plans to introduce the modified ordinance ahead of Tuesday's meeting of the zoning committee. According to the mayor's office, the new proposal, quote, reflects the voices and input of aldermen, advocates, business owners, and residents who showed up at a series of community meetings last week, many of whom voiced objections to Lightfoot's initial zoning plan. Last month's proposal would have prohibited the sale of recreational cannabis in much of the central business district. The so-called exclusion zone for pot shops would have stretched from Oak Street to Ida B. Wells Drive, and from Lake Michigan to LaSalle Street in River North, and to the Chicago River in the Loop. The modified ordinance would prohibit those sales north of the river from Lake Michigan to State Street instead of LaSalle Street. The revamped plan would extend the northern boundary of the, quote, exclusion zone to Division Street rather than Oak Street. While the exclusion zone would stretch slightly farther north, pot shops can now open much closer to the Magnificent Mile on Michigan Avenue.
All right. Well, you did that rapid, and I'm a little dyslexic anyway. And most people go left, I go right. Or right, I go left. I have to look at my hands before I know which one's the left and the right. So I couldn't follow those geographic boundaries. I will say this: I do not understand why there's any exclusion zone at all in the downtown. I've made this point several times. People want to buy reefer, and you would want, as the city, to get be the beneficiary of reefer sales to out-of-towners. They're going to be in the loop. They're going to be the tourists that come to Chicago. So this notion that somehow or other tourists would be offended by the sale of reefer is, I just think it's an outdated notion that sort of like goes back to reefer madness, that people are afraid of it. This is coming dangerously close to Bruce Rauner's rhetoric in the 2018 campaign, where he thought it was a good idea to run downstate by saying, I'm against reefer. And as Dennis points out many times, people downstate, they smoke marijuana too, and they eat reefer brownies. So I never understood why, this notion that the loop would be off limits. And you know what? I could give Ray Lowe credit, Alderman Raymond Lopez, when he was on the show. The city is saying, Mayor Lightfoot was saying, it should be a family-friendly area downtown. Well, what does that mean? What's that say about the rest of the city? So I say just do away with the exclusion zone altogether. If you're going to sell reefer in a neighborhood on the north side or the south side or the west side or the northwest side, sell it downtown. Those guys flying in from wherever they're flying in, they take the train into the loop. First thing they see is a reefer shop. They're going to want to buy themselves a joint or a gummy bear, right? And then just chill out. So tourists love reefer too. So I don't know. I say, it's funny. The city's talking about putting a gambling casino downtown. Now they are talking about it, but because they realize that tourists want to gamble. Well, they want to smoke reefer too. In fact, the more reefer they smoke, the worse they'll do at gambling, Diggy. And that'll be more money for the city. Hey, got to think, add it all together, right? So anyway, I say do away with the exclusion zones altogether.
Oh, boy, all this talk about marijuana. You want to smoke some weed after the show today?
I haven't smoked since 1981.
Oh, okay. We'll keep that alive. We'll keep that going.
Yeah.
All right, so that's what's going on in Chicago and or Illinois this afternoon. We got Maya Dukmasova coming in studio very shortly. And speaking of, if you haven't heard the news, Tuesday, November 5th. Yeah, it's going to be First Tuesday with Ben Joravsky, but Mick Dumke has stepped down as Ben's co-host, and he has a new one, Maya Dukmasova.
Yeah,
our guest coming in.
That is correct.
Yeah, Tuesday, November 5th. Ben, tell them all about the First Tuesday show. Let's get these people into the door.
Well, let me explain. It's called First Tuesday because it's held the first Tuesday of the month. How about that, huh, D?
Perfect.
There's some people are confused. They'll call me up. They go, Ben, that show you got, yeah? The one First Tuesdays, yeah? When is it? Well, now look, far be it for me to make fun of somebody who wants to know when the First Tuesday show is. You know what I'm saying, D? Because, I make mistakes too. Like, I'm not quite sure about the difference between my left and right hand. But anyway, it's called First Tuesdays because it's the first Tuesday of every month. It's at the Hideout because it's at the Hideout. And the Hideout is 1354 West Wabansia. And my good friend Mick Dumke is stepping down to spend more time with his family. But Maya will be my new co-host, new partner in crime, as she is every Tuesday. She should be here any minute now. So, we're going to keep it's a political talk show in a bar. You can drink. You can listen to great opinions. We do Q&A at the end. You get to ask questions. And our first guest with the new format with Maya, November 5th, will be, yeah, you guessed it, Stacey Davis Gage. Yeah. Stacey Davis Gates, SDG, as we call her around here, the governor from the Chicago Teachers Union. She will be our first guest on November 5th. You know why it's November 5th? Because it's the first Tuesday of the month. How about that?
Wait, so your show's on the first Tuesday of the month?
Well, yeah. It's this radical idea. Tim Tutton, the co-owner of the Hideout, came up with it. He goes, Ben, we're going to do a show. It's going to be on the first Tuesday. Now, get ready for this. We're going to call it First Tuesdays. Whoa, dude, man. They call it First Tuesdays because it's on the first Tuesday.
Right,
People still texting me, hey, Ben, when's the next show? Anyway.
All right, so I think we've hit that over your head enough. First Tuesday, November 5th, all right?
Stacey Davis Gates, Maya, me, First Tuesdays at the Hideout, 1354 West Wabansia. Maya's entered the room. She's all fired up for her first Tuesdays. It's actually, Can't wait. So anyway.
Stacey Davis Gates is their guest. They're going to be talking the Chicago teacher strike, and in case you're wondering where they stand on the whole thing, well, we'll tell you.
Yay for our teachers! Yay for our teachers!
For the teachers. I just play that for Maya because I know she
Maya loves it. Listen,
helps pump her
I
up.
love it.
Maya and Miles, the only other two people in the media, aside from me, who are with the teachers on this one. It's kind of lonely out there, Maya. Get used to it. Anyway.
I'll tell you where it's not lonely. in football podcast land. Oh, yeah, that's right. Because the Chicago Ready Set 2020. That's right. The Chicago Sun-Times have a brand new podcast for you to check out right when football season is around. Apparently, it's doing pretty well. They're getting some quite a few downloads. Hallis Intrigue, they call it. It's the latest podcast from the Chicago Sun-Times. You can tune in to hear sports reporters and Bears experts evaluate games, make predictions, provide insights, and analyze the days of big stories. Stay informed this football season and listen to Hallis Intrigue at suntimes.com/Hallis. That's Halas. And be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Check it out now, suntimes.com/HALAS. My Dukmasova is on board. Don't go anywhere. It's the Ben Joravsky Show. Today's Ben Joravsky Show was brought to you in part by Chicago Architecture Center. Get to know your city on one of Chicago Architecture Center's 65 walking tours. Hear the unforgettable secrets and stories behind Chicago architecture from our expert docents. Book your tour at architecture.org/tours. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm actually on a tour right now. Oh, wow, look at that building. Get a special discount for Illinois residents from July 15th to August 15th. All Illinois residents get 50% off select walking tours. Visit architecture.org/IL-resident.
Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them. ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Benny J, take it away.
Maya in the studio. A great story in last week's Reader, cover story in the Reader. I urge absolutely everybody to read it about a co-op in South Shore. But don't read it now, because I want you to be listening to Maya right now. She's all fired up to talk about Hillary, Chelsea, and Lori. I have no idea what she's going to say, folks. She just told me she wants to talk about it. When we were talking on the phone today, when I was driving in, she goes, I want to talk about it, Ben, but I don't want to tell you. I want to save it for the show. Yep. So we're going to save it for the show. But before we do that, promote. What you got tomorrow?
All right. So tomorrow at 6 p.m., I just want to remind everybody that the Marshall Project's We Are Witnesses film series is continued to screen around various public library branches in the city. And so tomorrow at 6 p.m., I will be hosting and moderating one of these screening events. We'll be showing 3 of the films in the We Are Witnesses series. The series is composed of a bunch of short films of interviews with people who have in various ways been impacted by the criminal justice system. The Reader is collaborating with the Marshall Project on these on this series, and after the screening of the 3 short films, we'll have a panel discussion with the people who were featured in the films, and we have Judge Ruben Castillo, who is the chief judge of the Illinois Northern District Federal Court, and we have a woman who was a survivor of an acid attack, and also the mother of a young man who was shot and killed several years ago. So I went to one of these events a few weeks ago, and it was tremendously moving and a really, really thought-provoking discussion between the people, a lot of whom were coming from very different positions on criminal justice issues. So I really encourage everyone to attend. Tomorrow's event is at 6 p.m. at the Sulzer Regional Library. It's in the kind of Old Town North Side area. So, and the event is free. So yeah, people should come through.
It's at Sulzer, which is on Lincoln Avenue, right near Montrose.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, now, last night you were at an event. Hillary Clinton, Chelsea Clinton, Lori Lightfoot. Take it away, Maya.
All right. So this was the Chicago Ideas Week Monday night feature spotlight event. So for those who don't know, Chicago Ideas Week's been going on for almost a decade, and the Monday of the week of Ideas Week, they always have kind of like a keynote event centered around some big question that's relevant to the nation. And so yesterday evening, this event was, the question was, should policy have a conscience? All right. Now, and so
was
the people,
question?
yes,
like there's a no in that.
Should policy have a conscience? And so basically, it was like a series of one-on-one conversations with various influential people. And the capstone of this was a conversation between Mayor Lori Lightfoot and Hillary and Chelsea Clinton. Now, the first conversation was between J.D. Vance, who's the author of Hillbilly Elegy, and Jamil Smith, who's a writer at Rolling Stone. Interesting conversation. Then there was a conversation between Abby Phillip, who's a CNN correspondent, White House correspondent, and Samantha Power, former U.S. ambassador. Very interesting conversation, all about policy, and foreign policy especially. Then there was a conversation between WBZ's Steve Edwards and Helene Gale, who's the CEO of the Chicago Community Trust, kind of about equity issues and local policy. And then finally, the big premiere spotlight thing, of the evening.
Wait, time out. So you sat through all those?
Yes, and all of these were pretty short. And then there was 45 minutes at the end that was reserved for this, star-studded, Lori, Hillary, Chelsea conversation.
Okay.
Lori comes out, she's standing at the podium. She introduces Chelsea and Hillary. They come out, they sit down, and for the next 45 minutes, all they talk about is Hillary and Chelsea's new book about quote-unquote gutsy women. This was a fucking book tour stop. And three of the most powerful women in this country sat there and for 45 minutes discussed questions such as, what kind of books do you read to your kids, Chelsea? And, what inspires you, Hillary? Like, there was absolutely no conversation about policy, about conscience, about anything of import. There was a moment at which Lori Lightfoot was saying that she had spent her day, this is 2 days before possibly one of the most important teacher strikes that might ever happen in the history of this city. Lori said that she was spending her day that day, this was yesterday, Monday, calling around some of her friends and asking for suggestions for questions to ask Hillary and Chelsea. I mean, my mind was blown, absolutely blown, that there was not a single topic of import that was discussed besides, this was all a big conversation to promote this book, which consists of like 100 essays that Chelsea and Hillary wrote about various women that they find inspirational, like famous women, not famous women. I don't know. They talked a lot about Shirley Chisholm, like just things that were so innocuous. And they spent a bunch of time joking about the writing process and how, Chelsea was like doing everything on the computer and Hillary Clinton is still like writes everything longhand. And there was like trivia. It was like trivia.
Yeah.
There was not a single question or anything related to policy. Should policy have a conscience or anything like that? Nothing of import was discussed about the city of Chicago. Nothing of import was discussed about this nation, about what was going on in the world at all. Like, and one of the things that, I'm sure what happened here is that Hillary Clinton's people were just like, all right, we'll bring her to this event, but this is all you can talk about is this book. I'm sure this was like stage managed to a T, but I just found it as a woman, like so incredibly like disappointing to be present at an event where three women who've whether you like them or not, have ascended to tremendous levels of power in this country. And the whole theme of it was supposed to be about policy. And you're sitting there and listening to them talk about these like sentimental domestic topics, which is like the most, I feel like just like such a like, I don't know, like an anti-feminist thing. Like it was like here are women talking about family, talking about their inspiration, talking about like, you know, their mother-daughter relationships, like all of this stuff, like where that women have been for decades and centuries fighting for a chance to speak on in arenas that aren't about that where they aren't relegated to this kind of sphere of domestic rhetoric and talking about relationships and family and all this kind of stuff. These are women who, like, I don't know what other women are there if not these women who have like are supposed to be broken out of that like realm of discourse, who've like actually been and are in situations where they are on equal footing with men and they're holding power, and still the whole thing revolved around the most stereotypical and traditional feminized topics of discussion. And it just all felt like this was a big show put on for fans of Hillary Clinton who just wanted to hear her speak about her grandkids and feel warm and fuzzy and, you know.
Well, they should have titled that "Warm and Fuzzy with Hillary."
Yeah, and they would have gotten the same. They would have filled the Harris Theater anyway.
Yeah,
because like the people that were sitting next to me, they were talking about how much they loved it, how much they love Hillary Clinton, how much they wish that she was the president, blah 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 blah. And it's like I was so disgusted and disappointed by this. It was unbelievable.
Well, you know, you were disgusted by it. You were disappointed by it. Were you surprised by it?
I guess I wasn't that surprised. I mean, I can't believe it was so brazen that this was literally an event. You know, should policy have a conscience? And there wasn't even an attempt to shoehorn any question about policy in any of it in this discussion. Lori didn't ask a single question that had anything to do with policy.
Well, just think about it. Just think about it. Just pause. And then I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. You just pointed out the context of that event Monday night. We're on the brink of a strike, and I keep saying this over and over again. Most the media critics of the Chicago Teachers Union for the last week or two have been chiding the teachers for going on strike over things like class size and over things like nurses and social workers in schools and telling them to shut up and take the money. Okay? So the question of the day is, should policy have a conscience? Chicago Teachers Union is taking a strike over issues of conscience. Okay? If they were just going to be traditional, the way we are in this country, take the money, shut up, let the school system put 40 kids in a classroom, but they're taking a stand over conscience, all right? So Lori's she's on the other side of that. So how is she going to address that in a real way? Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I mean, she was in a position in this conversation to be the one asking the questions. Like Chelsea and Hillary weren't really asking Lori Lightfoot questions. She was like relegated to this like, oh, like I'm moderating the conversation with you two. But you know, it's also... Maybe my analysis that this was like an unfortunately domesticated and kind of traditionally feminized discussion in this like very like retrograde way. Like maybe actually what this is like some kind of other side of the coin for what it means to like really ascend to power beyond consequences. Like, maybe Lori's not quite there yet, but like the fact that these women were able to sit there and just at an event that was supposed to be about policy and conscience and just have this breezy conversation about this book, about their female heroes or whatever. And, have a full house, listening to them. Like, it's just, I don't know, like something about it is like, it's like it's like a really shameless exercise of power to like just be in a position where you're supposedly going to address something serious and have a most unserious discussion about the most inconsequential possible things.
Are you talking about power or are you talking about celebrity? Because it sounded like a celebration of celebrity, of personalities, whereas a power is what Lori is exercising in regards to the Chicago Teachers Union's demand that they put a cap on class size. She's exercising her power as the most powerful politician in the city of Chicago to say no.
I guess what I mean was just that, like, that, you know, I don't know what the conveners of Chicago Ideas Week were thinking, or how they like, what the logic was here. But the idea is, I mean, I wonder if from the get-go this was supposed to be it, or if they were supposed to have Hillary and Chelsea come, and then at the last minute it became about, we're only going to talk about the book. But, like, I guess what I mean by power is just like that like a public official, an elected public official, a former elected public official, and former Secretary of State, and former, like, first, you know, female presidential candidate with a serious chance at the Democratic Party nomination, and Chelsea Clinton, who's also, like, immensely powerful in her world, that they can come into a space in which they're supposedly going to address issues of real import, and just, like, so blatantly not do it, and, like, that's fine. You know? Like, it's just, it boggles my mind. It boggles my mind that this, I mean, whatever. The people at the theater were probably happy. There were lots of people there who were, like, just pantsuit nation type folks, I think, who were just loving seeing Hillary Clinton and enjoying this warm moment with her.
Well, that's, listen, I feel if they had just billed it as a night with Hillary and Chelsea and Lori talking about their grandkids, then that's great. Yeah. But that's a very provocative title, and it leads you to believe
that these are going to be three of, like, some of the most powerful women in this country are going to talk about this, like, very provocative question. Which, I mean, okay, the answer is, like, yes.
Well, no, but
should policy have a conscience? But, like,
policy has a conscience. But let's think about this. Let's think about this again in the context of what's happening right now in the city of Chicago. Should policy have a conscience? Right now, the teachers are being told by Establishment Chicago, you can't afford to have class size limits. We can't afford that as a city. That is the message that's being directed to the teachers. Okay? So that's a clear case where policy does not have a conscience, because the one thing we should be saying to the teachers who are willing to go without a paycheck over the issue of class size is, we're with you. So if policy had a conscience in the city of Chicago, then the people who run this city,
wouldn't be sitting on stage with Hillary Clinton talking about her grandkids on the eve of a strike.
They would be saying, yes, I'm going to put it in the contract that there's limits on class size so that the next mayor has to be obligated. I mean, I won't be mayor forever. And as a city of Chicago, we're making a commitment. But policy has no conscience. Maya, I think that's the answer to the question. I mean, if you just put it in real terms.
Yeah, I mean, really, actually, yeah, you're right. I mean, basically, the question, those 45 minutes answered the question. No, policy has
Policy does not have a conscience. Policy is just power, and
power has no conscience either.
Yeah, power. Take the money and shut up. There is no conscience in that. Yes, sir.
We have video of a little bit of the conference here. Lori Lightfoot interviewing Chelsea and
Hillary.
Oh
yeah, let's see.
It's the very beginning. Let's see how much we can stomach. By the way, Chicago Ideas Week, sponsors of this show. Fantastic event there. I think tonight Liz Phair is going to be speaking.
That's one of Maya's favorites, Liz Phair. Maya, don't laugh. Wait, all right. Play.
Liz Phair.
Do you like Liz Phair? Okay, she just came out with a book. All right.
One or two fans here in Chicago. We're fans of Chicago, so that's
and you have great music.
So let's just jump into the conversation. You wrote this book, as you said, as an extension of conversations the two of you have been having since Chelsea was a young girl. Collaborations can be interesting, both exhilarating and maybe exasperating. So I want to ask you for a few questions about the process. First, how did you go from sharing stories over the years to deciding to write a book?
Good question, Mayor. Good question.
I'm sorry, can you just stop? This is insane. How did you go from sharing stories to deciding to write a book. This is the mayor of the third largest city in America asking a high school journalism question for a woman who used to live at the White House, the former First Lady of the United States, former Secretary of State, former Senator for the state of New York. Like,
how'd she go from... Yeah, well, maybe someone offered her an advance. That's probably the real, hey, I will pay you $1 million if you write this book. I think that would be the...
Wild. Actually, it's a great question. How much, if anything, did Chelsea and Hillary make for that appearance yesterday?
Well, no,
I'm sure they didn't do it for free.
I'm not talking about the appearance. I'm talking about for the book. In other words, you went from conversation to a book. That was the question. All right, that was I'm answering the literal question.
Yeah.
So the answer
How'd you
is
decide
probably
to go from conversations to a book?
And probably the answer would be, well, somebody offered me a lot of money to write the book. And then the second question, as a follow-up, would be the Ben question. I don't believe anybody with who is a public official ever wrote the thing they put their name on. I don't believe Rahm ever wrote any of his op-ed pieces.
They spent so much time talking about how they were actually writing it together.
Wow. I just saw a great movie, Pain and Glory, about the creative process, and I urge everybody to see it. But if you're really, writing's hard, okay? I throw it out there. Somebody's been doing it for 2 billion years. It's hard work. I have a hard time. Maybe they did write it. I don't know.
I'm always interested in the before this happens, behind the scenes, what they went over and what they said they're going to say, what they're not going to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. What's off limits? Don't ask me about Kim Fox questions.
Yeah.
But
can I just make a suggestion that Dennis, you need to have a soundbite of "Great question, Mayor."
Yeah, that's a great question, Mayor. I will say this. You mentioned Samantha Power. Now, let me just give a shout out to Samantha Power. I don't always agree with Samantha Power, but her entire career has been dedicated to the issue of should policy have a conscience. Samantha Power is an academic. She's a journalist. She's a former writer. She actually wrote a book that won a Pulitzer Prize. She was an advisor to Barack Obama. And her chief thesis throughout her career, Maya, and I know you know this, but her chief thesis is that the United States should use its power, its military power, to prevent genocide in the world. And she writes examples of it, like different countries where genocide occurred, where if the United States had intervened, maybe bombing or sending in troops. I have issues with a lot of what she has to say. I'm not sure if intervention would have protected genocide. But she is a woman who has struggled with this question for her entire career.
Yeah, and yesterday the conversation between her and Abby Phillip were all about that. Were actually about the topic that was proposed for the evening. It was a conversation about, she talked about how she actually started out as a journalist in former Yugoslavia in her early 20s, and it was there where she was writing about genocide and war and the NATO bombings that she was started thinking about can all of this power be used to prevent ethnic cleansing and genocide and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean the whole conversation between them was all about what it was like to be in the Obama administration and be grappling with these questions, how futile it can be sometimes to argue for big changes, but that if you have a sustained campaign of making small changes on a consistent basis, you can kind of get closer to the goals. I mean, it was just like a, I have limited buy-in in in the inspirational kind of power of people at this level of influence, but I did think that it was a genuinely interesting conversation and an attempt to stick to what the topic of the evening was supposed to be. And it was both, there was some personal stuff in there where she was candid about her background and whatever, but it was also very much it stayed close to the theme. It made me want to read her book, and it was thought-provoking.
Yeah. Well,
the conversation between Lori and the Clintons was mind-numbing.
Yeah.
It was mind-numbing.
Arise out of those conversations, and part of what happened is
I don't know, guys. I'm kind of into it.
a mom to three, starting
Really?
with.
I mean, maybe it's the ultimate flex for a woman on the level of power that Hillary Clinton has in this country and this world, to be in front of an audience of hundreds of people and just be talking about our grandkids. Maybe that's the ultimate flex of power.
Listen, again, I'll repeat what I've been saying. If it had been billed as Hillary and Chelsea talking about their grandkids and children event, that's one thing. But you're absolutely right. And by the way, the context of this event, there's so much going on in the world that I would love to hear these three powerful people talking about, not just in the city of Chicago, but the madness and lunacy in Washington. And I don't know if you follow this because it's sort of in the realm of sports, but there's a connection. Follow me on this. They wrote a book where they talk about the great inspirational figures from the past who've inspired them. I've not read the book. I'm just based on what you said, okay? And women from the past, and I presume most of these women have passed on. They're now dead, so they're not around and not participating. And that's a genuine. I see that also often, Maya, when people have left. Have literally died or retired or just said, I don't want to talk anymore. And I'm thinking of Muhammad Ali lose the ability to talk. Then they're suddenly extolled as virtuous people, champions, right? But when they're there and they're full capacity and able to talk and articulate what they want to say, I think of Karen Lewis at this point. When Karen Lewis was here, that's a whole, everybody loves Karen Lewis now, the former head of the Chicago Teachers Union. But when Karen...
She's a former
head, right, former.
The Hydra's head has been... once decapitated, the Hydra is no longer a threat.
Well, it's interesting because I don't know if you follow these things, but the National Basketball Association has gotten itself into a lot of trouble in regards to China, where one of the general manager out of nowhere, the power of Twitter, man, it blows
I just saw something about LeBron too.
Yeah, LeBron's in trouble now. And LeBron James, okay, so what happened was, I'll just boil it down for our non-sports fans. The general manager of the Houston Rockets tweeted out, just out of nowhere, support solidarity for the protesters in Hong Kong. Immediately, there was a backlash from the Chinese government that is a business partner with the NBA. Millions and millions of dollars were on the line in terms of sneaker sales, in terms of TV contracts, in terms of personal appearances, etc. The Lakers were about to go to China and play a series of exhibition games that were going to be televised. China said, we're not going to televise them. There was an immediate backlash. And what did the NBA do in the face of that backlash? Retreated. As an institution. Money was at stake. And so the principles of free speech, open window, throw them out. Now, it's easy for me to criticize them, Maya. I'm not sitting there at the table with millions of dollars on the line. So it's easy for me or you or Mark Sims, our next guest, to say, oh, the NBA should have stood up to China. Well, we don't have the money on the line. But nonetheless, it was pretty a raw display of power by the Chinese government and a pretty raw display of capitulation by the NBA. Anyway, LeBron weighs in on behalf of the Chinese government with tweets saying that the general manager from Houston didn't realize what he was talking about and there were consequences. And now there's backlash against LeBron because... the only consequence that you're facing is the loss of money. People in Hong Kong are facing the consequence of loss of freedom. And so now LeBron's like, I don't know what Lord knows what he's trying to tweet to get out of it. But it just goes to show you that it's easier to talk. Let me put it this way. What made Muhammad Ali so great is that for his convictions, whether you agree with him or not, he put his livelihood at stake. He challenged the government on the Vietnam War, said he's not going to go into the army to fight the Vietnam War, and he lost his title. He couldn't sell sneakers. He couldn't sell shoes or T-shirts. He lost his livelihood as a result, but he said his conscience was greater than that, and I have tremendous respect. LeBron is going to bat for his ability to sell sneakers to China. Do you follow what I'm see the difference?
Yeah.
So I guess it's easy to talk about people when they're not. Like Muhammad Ali's not here right now, so maybe I know he's not in that book by Chelsea and Hillary because he's not a woman. But anyway, it's a lot.
But it's that same, it's that same kind of. I get what you're saying. There's a way in which we tend to extol these people who are no longer able to really be a threat as having been gutsy or brave and doing the right thing. But it's like while they were here, actually being a challenge, people did, there was all people did everything in their power to neutralize them, so yeah. I get where you're coming from, and I just think that, yesterday was a real shame. I mean, I guess, Chicago Ideas Week filled their theater. Chelsea and Hillary sold their books, but I think anybody looking for anything of substance from people in some of the greatest positions of power in this country really got the short end of the stick.
All right, Maya, tell it I like it. I'll tell you what, Maya's not afraid to speak up to power, that's for sure. And one last thing, I know it's late in the show, we got Marc coming on, but man, you sent out a tweet you sent out. You're the only, Maya's the Twitter of the two of us. I've come to respect, by the way, I have to tell you, it's an obvious point. The power of Twitter is unbelievable. One little tweet by that Houston Rockets general manager has set off
a geopolitical crisis.
Yeah, it's a geopolitical crisis and a corporate crisis for all the big Nikes of the world who have to deal with this issue. So you were right and I was wrong on Twitter, but your little tweet, which is in retrospect has gone viral as well. Just briefly talk about that.
Oh, I just made an observation about how, Chicago is a place where the police union has an enshrined contractual right for officers who are accused of any misconduct to review any evidence against them and meet with their union lawyers and whatnot and kind of close ranks and talk amongst themselves before they are required to give any statements to the department about said alleged misconduct. And meanwhile, the teachers can't strike over class size. So, just kind of an interesting an interesting dynamic we have in the city. Not that one there's not like a causal relationship between the two, but it's just interesting what kind of concessions are given to the police union and what kind of concessions aren't given to the teachers, and that the teachers have to, risk their lives and to risk going to jail to have to fight for. Somebody was like, somebody in response said something about how like, well, but the cops can't strike and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, the city gives so much to the police, and it's because even if they can't strike, they can assert themselves in a way that threatens the political forces in the city in all kinds of ways. So it's just a matter of, I think, the city taking the police union much more seriously than the teachers union, and that is what the teachers union is doing this whole decade basically has been to assert themselves to be taken seriously and to become an actual, a serious adversary that can't be ignored and can't be, dismissed. So, I guess it'll be interesting to see what happens with these police union contract negotiations, which are also actually currently going on, we haven't heard anything about them because they've been just nothing is popping basically.
Well, and the point that the person who wrote in response to you is a very telling one. Police do not have the right to strike, and so the teachers do have the right to strike, although it's limited by law over what they can supposedly strike over. So that's why, all this attention's on the teachers because they're threatening to strike. Could you imagine if the police threaten to strike?
Yeah, but you don't think that they assert themselves in other ways at that bargaining table in a way that makes that really puts the, pressure on the city?
Yeah, I don't.
Have you ever seen the police the police union contract?
Yeah, but I'm going to say this about that.
They don't need to strike. Is the point?
I know they don't need. Well, how long have they been without a contract?
They've still got their contract. It's been over a year that it's been expired, but there are no rush. There are no rush to
settle it. So generally, the way it's gone in the city of Chicago, police and fire contracts go a year or so because there's. I want to say, don't quote me on this one. The last one was over a year before they settle it. There's never a great rush to settle police and fire contract because they can't strike. The pressure is to settle with the teachers because they can strike. And that apparently is the only time the powers that be in the city care about labor. When labor, I hate to say it, you talk about should policy have a conscience. Apparently it only has a conscience when labor is about to go on strikes.
Well, I suggest that maybe you should have a show with Jesse Sharkey and Kevin Graham on here. From the teachers and the police union, and see how the discussion goes.
We would have to probably have that guy from who was the big bodyguard that was on Old Boy's show?
The bodyguard on Old Boy's show.
Marc.
Talking to people without the mic. Excellent.
Who was the dude? I just blanked on his name. Everybody would fight on his show. He was the former mayor of Cincinnati.
Jerry Springer.
Thank you. Didn't Jerry Springer have a big bodyguard who had his own show?
Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, thank you.
Steve Wilco.
I'm going to need, what was his last name?
Steve Wilco?
We're going to need Steve Wilco in this studio if I bring in the Kevin Grant. Yeah, man, I just had to do, how could I forget Jerry Springer's name?
Well, both of your sets of personal reflections throughout the book talk about the women who were really important to you early on in your life. You just mentioned your first grade teacher, and you note other women that you came into contact along the way. And Madam Secretary, you talk a lot about the mothers
I was kind of into it.
of your friends, where you went to their houses and you knew that they were going to be kind and generous.
Okay, wrap it up, Lightfoot. My goodness.
The first grade teacher. Was that first grade teacher who went on strike? Anyway.
Lightfoot did not go to radio school. Wrap it up.
All right. Well, come on. It's not easy. First time out of the box, all right? Dee, show some sympathy for her. First time she ever had to ask a question when the person wasn't under oath at a deposition, whatever. Maya, great job as always. See you at I'll see you before First Tuesday, but my new partner, Crime at First Tuesdays. We got Marc Sims sitting on deck. We're going to bring him on when we return.
Pick up the reader.
So that theme of women being present and how they make a difference, talk a little bit about that and how that, again, animated some of the selections that you made of people in the book.
That's a great question, Mayor, because I wanted to include women who I could distinctly remember the impact that they had on me. And obviously historical figures. I never knew Helen Keller or Anne Frank or Maria Tolchief or Amelia Earhart, but as a little girl, they made a big impression on me. But there were so many women, and I've been fortunate over the last 25 years or so to meet women whose courage, whose resilience truly just takes my breath away. So I wrote about a woman, Dr. Hawa Abdi. She is a Somali OBGYN.
Hey, everybody. What you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. J-E-F-F. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
Where is the accountability in the system? You cannot have, because of a person's position, one set of rules apply to them, and another set of rules apply to everybody else. In another way, you're seeing this play out in the universities, where people pay extra to get their kids a special position in universities. Now you have a person, because of their position and background, who's getting treated in a way that nobody else would ever, sorry about that, don't get near, I'm doing near my sermon here, that would ever get close to this type of treatment.
What a douchebag. All right, hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show for Tuesday, October 15th is moments away. But before we get into that, we need to thank the following unions for jumping on board and bringing back this program. We love these people. Unions like the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150, and the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, not Aerosmith, Local 126 and District 8. And, of course, today's show is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2, let's go. It is Tuesday, October 15th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, it's the return of our dear friend and host of Just a Few Questions, the one, the only Marc Sims. And Ben's Alderman will be in studio. Oh, I hope we cleaned up enough. 47th Ward Alderman Matt Martin. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist, Ben Joravsky.
Matt Martin will be in the studio in a little while. Dennis, put the pizza cartons away, okay?
Oh,
My Alderman is coming in the studio, all right? Put the pizza cartons away and try to put the bong under the table. Don't put it on the table.
Just one more hit.
Yes, Marc Sims, marijuana jokes on the Ben Joravsky Show. We've been known to make a few. Just a Few Questions is the name of the podcast. My favorite is when you interview Dennis. I love that interview with Dennis.
I post that whenever I can on Twitter. On Twitter, it may go viral. It's on Twitter. You never know.
You never know.
And before we go any further, we do have an update. Christmas has come early for the Ben Joravsky Show. Isn't that right, Robert Mueller?
That's correct.
Today, Chicago's popular, I'm doing air quotes there, not popular amongst us, Chicago's popular scooter pilot ends today.
Oh, hooray!
Chicago's e-scooter experiment
Good God.
comes to an end. The city had allowed 10 companies to provide the scooters in certain neighborhoods since June 15. And since June 15, we've been just so upset about it. Seriously, I've seen people with no helmet. Like, I get crap for not riding a helmet or not wearing a helmet when I ride my bicycle. No one's right now wearing a helmet on these scooters. But anyway, in total, 772,450 scooter rides were taken during the trial period. 772,450.
That sounds like a lot.
It does sound like a lot. They were taken during this trial period. That's an average of about 7,000 rides per day. WBEZ's Vivian McCall reports the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection oversaw the program and will now take it the next several months to analyze data collected from the participating scooter companies. So, will we see the scooter madness continue, or will it be over?
I hope it's over.
You and me both, pal.
700,000, did you say?
772,450.
707. Wow, that's a lot of. Mark, did you ride a scooter at all?
Oh, hell no. Damn thing's dangerous, man.
Did they have any in your neighborhood?
Of course not. I wonder why the West Loop look kind of different today. They're not here, right? It's like it's a calm over the West Loop. No, the thing I want to know how the people who took the scooters, would they have walked or would they have taken public transportation or drove in their own car? That's the kind of stuff I would like to know.
Dennis, do a deep dive on that, huh?
Get back Dennis, to me. Get on it.
Dennis and I, Mark, the first when those scooters broke out, we were walking down Racine to the Blue Line, and these guys on scooters were whipping around, and I'm telling you right now, they didn't know how to ride those scooters. And there they are on scooters in traffic, whipping around, no helmet. I'm like, man, get off that scooter. And then they come on the sidewalk. I'm like, dude, you're not supposed to be on the sidewalk. And they get an attitude at you when
well, they're not as bad as the bicycle dudes. The bicycle dudes are bad. Not the divvy lift things, the real
bike riders.
Yeah, they're absolutely, and I want to tell them so bad. In my neighborhood, that attitude is not going to work. Why don't you come up to the far south side with me and get your butt kicked? Because they be bringing it, and I can't bring it because I'm on the north side. Got to be chill out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
On the south side, they wouldn't bring that attitude.
How far south do you live again?
I can't tell people where I live.
No, don't say literally where you live. But you know what? There's some advantages to the Eddie Murphy movie. Is not anywhere on the north side.
It's near my house. I could walk to the studio.
Yeah, you can walk to the studio.
I mean, to the movie theater.
We had,
on 83rd Street by the Walmart.
It's on 83rd Street.
Yeah, I was at the Home Depot the other day. I could have gone, but I didn't.
Did you see it?
You know, I don't go watch movies, man. Last movie I saw was like the Powerpuff Girls with my son and daughter when they were little.
Oh, that's a long time. Sergio Mims was.
You don't even know who the Powerpuff Girls are.
Yeah, I do. Which one's your favorite?
I don't know. They were like little, bumblebees or something?
Sounds like you're a big fan, too.
Yeah, I mean, there's a kids watching this stuff, man.
Anyway, Sergio Mims was extolling its virtues. I wanted to see it. It was nowhere to be found. So I had to decide, do I want to drive to 83rd Street to see a movie?
You could take the red line.
I could take the red line.
With my peeps.
Yeah, I could take the red line. All right.
Something I'm not going to do.
I could take the red line or drive to 83rd Street to see a movie. I may still do it, by the way.
For real. If you're in the neighborhood, give me a call.
We'll go see it together.
That's if I'm, you know how I am. Well, Ben, I don't really know.
Sometimes it's hard to get Marc out of the house.
Yeah, for real. I'm scared to come out the house.
I'm really busy. All right. I promoted you as being one of the few people in the city of Chicago who didn't get
Right.
Unfortunately, no one's listening to me.
When you do TIFF, it's like, it's like, what do you take to make people go to sleep? Like sleepies or something? I don't know.
I hear you,
TIFF,
man. Listen, I can't argue with you. I cannot argue with you. Been writing this story.
God, TIFF.
I remember a couple of aldermen. We were having a discussion, what the heck? It was so many years ago. It was Ed Smith, your favorite alderman from the 28th Ward, and Joe Moore, your second favorite alderman from the 49th Ward. This is like 15 years ago, and they were going on and on about how much, I don't know, I didn't even remember the issue, and I started talking about TIFs, and they were like, there you go again, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, all right. It's easy to say that excuses you. Here's the part of the poll, Marc Sims, that I find, I had a smile. 11% have no opinion at all. How can you not have an opinion?
Because you don't have children in school, you don't keep up with education. It means absolutely nothing. That's why when this is all said and done, I would say this is Stacey Davis Gates' face.
Yeah.
Or Brandon Johnson. I'm trying to get Brandon on the show.
Yeah. And better say something nice.
No. Get the beat down. And so, I'm not a big fan of teachers because a lot of people like me didn't have really good relationships with it's really not so much the teachers as human beings. It's the whole damn system.
All right, let me ask you this. Now, I'm not trying to be your therapist. I'm not trying to put you on the.
I wish you would.
On the couch. But I was not the most stellar of students. I'm just going to throw that out there. And, but I don't blame my teachers. Because I spent too much time at college smoking reefer, watching movies, and eating pizza. All right? And watching sports. And not enough time studying.
But you wasn't raised on the far south side in the Negro schools of the 1970s.
No, but I'm just saying the same principle holds. Yeah. Young Marc Sims, when he was a kid, probably spent too much time. What were you doing?
Watching TV. Love that stuff. TV. No, but seriously.
If you had spent all the time watching TV, instead of watching TV, you'd been reading and doing your homework, you would have been a young scholar.
No, it's really very basic. If you have wonderful parents who have expectations for you and say, we're going to help you meet those expectations. If you're an average kid, just, can't memorize everything, you'll be fine. And not to put down my parents, but they had a different approach, that kind of stuff. And also, if you're a very smart kid that can memorize everything, you'll be just fine. The kids come from destabilized home or indifferent parents are going to have trouble because the system ain't designed for a lot of smart people. We don't want an enlightened society. This is why we have Trump, your president, Trump in the White House, because most folks are not that bright. You hear him argue, going to far tangent into tangent. I love you and say tangent. Say that. Say it for me.
I'm tangent into tangent.
I love it.
Yeah.
So, you were talking about how these Democrats are going back home to Michigan today, congressional district, and they are getting an earful. And when you hear these people, what are you doing? That's my president. He ain't guilty. I'm like, what are you talking about? The man, he's about to destroy our republic as we know it, and they want him to stay in. I'm sorry I went off.
No, but I like that tangent, and I agree with that tangent very much. And I have to.
It's because people had a bad education. They've been miseducated, and they're crazy. We're not taught about the 3 branches of government. Yeah, people still, Obama didn't do nothing. He ain't did nothing for us. We have 3 branches of freaking government. Then you have Mitch McConnell, who made a deal with the devil to keep Trump in, and he is just slamming the courts. I'm not an expert on the courts, but he's getting you're 25, 30 years old. People younger than Dennis are on the freaking courts, and they're going to be there for the next 40 freaking years.
I don't think it's possibly younger than the young Dennis over there.
By the way, Mark said he's not a big fan of teachers. Stacey Davis Gates just got here. Hold on.
Is there a second door here?
I love teachers. Stacey Davis Gates comes in the studio.
I just read the paper. She was a 7th grade geography teacher, something. The job or something.
Yes.
I got to read it again. And no, my thing is that it's really the system more than the teachers. It's really, and I hopefully when this is all said and done, the teacher will talk about the kids learning in school, because at the end of the day, like I said last time I was here, the black boys, most of them do poorly in school. I know it's not just the school, but they have to change the way the people are taught, because you're trying to educate people for a world of AI, freaking AI. That's why I love
Allen Iverson.
Very good, Dennis.
Very good. He's not a basketball fan.
I ain't a fan of nothing. But that's why I like Andrew Yang. I'm going to watch him on the debate
we'll
tonight.
Talk about the debates.
That's
right.
Yeah, because that's why I promote him on Twitter. I got to promote Dennis and Ben more, because I like some of the ideals. Because there are people like me. I've worked dead end jobs, basically dead end jobs, and I shouldn't say dead end jobs, but somewhere with dead end jobs for 39 freaking years, because I didn't have a good education. I didn't have the self-confidence, because some people have a terrible education, but if they got confidence, the sky's the freaking limit.
Yeah.
And that's part of what they should be teaching. You should not leave high school without having you can speak in public, at least very good, write very well, a freaking sentence or two, because you need confidence to go against all these computers. The algorithms are going to take people got a good job now. Your good job is going to be taken away by an algorithm or a robot.
All right.
And we got to get ready for that.
Is there, when you look back on your career as a young scholar in the Chicago Public Schools, Fenger High School,
and Ryder Elementary School,
and Ryder, RYDER Elementary School, and when you look back, can you recall any teachers that you recall fondly, that you appreciate what they did? Wow,
I can't remember all the names. They were nice people, but they were indifferent, because most teachers, and this is when my kids, because remember, I went through the public school for 13 years, and we sent our children to public school for 13 years. Oh, okay, I did them a little asterisk. Went to a charter school for the last 4. Don't get me started on that. But most teachers, like the 20/80 rule, most teachers there for a paycheck. You can find the ones who are really trying to transform a child's life, and they are magic, and they are few and far between. I never forget that my son's 2nd, 3rd grade teacher, my wife remembers this stuff, I don't remember half of it. She said, it's a famous quote, she said, don't totally rely on the Chicago public schools to teach your children. And you should say, duh, when you hear that, but a lot of people rely totally on the Chicago public schools to teach their children.
I'm now going to defend the Chicago public school teachers. You said most of them are they're there for the paycheck.
That's right.
They're about to go on strike for non-pay issues. And while they're going on strike for things like lower class size, which will help the young Marc Sims of Chicago, while they go on strike for things like more nurses and more librarians and more social workers, which would help the young Marc Sims of Chicago, while they do that, the powers that be in the city are saying, shut up and take the money. So they can't win. They get criticized.
They can't win because they haven't built the rapport with parents. There's a lot of folks who've been here. I'm a lifer. You're a Chicagoan too. You don't believe
I am not a Chicagoan.
But I was born and raised here, like a lot of folks.
You are a real
And most
Chicagoan.
people, depending on what school you went to, and what side of town, or what type of personality you have, you didn't really have a great experience with that. And a lot of parents didn't have great experiences. So a lot of people forget the teachers. Forget them. Screw them.
Well, I'm happy to say.
Should I curse a bit? Should I curse?
Let him rip.
Yeah,
Let him rip.
you just
Maya left the room. I
did.
feel like cursing when
Maya did.
She drops the bomb.
She's like Stone Cold Steve Austin. It's just crazy.
And Adolfo Mondragon, he comes in ripping. And I think Stacey Davis Gates might have dropped a... No, never?
She just seemed like the type. On camera.
She's a pro. She's a pro.
Pro. She doesn't do it. What about a brother? When he was on the show, did he do it twice?
So many F-bombs.
He did not.
I don't think he did.
But I'm happy to say that most people agree with me.
No. Look at that. But most people are indifferent because half the people either don't know or don't care, don't have an opinion. But half the people,
49. I'm going to do the basic math. Okay. By the way, I went to Evanston High School. All right.
You did go to Evanston. Okay. Excuse me.
I learned hard, difficult math. All right. 49% are basically say they strongly support or somewhat support the strike, and 38% total said they either somewhat oppose or strongly oppose. It's 11% that have no opinion.
But I'm looking at this pie chart, which is almost half of people are opposed or indifferent. That's what I'm getting.
Oh, you mean oppose or have no? Well, you could do it the other way. Almost half the people, roughly half the people,
half
support.
And the other half are like, huh?
No,
you know what I'm saying?
Only 11% are huh.
Yeah, but the other ones are kind of indifferent, though.
Somewhat, you mean? So if you want to add the somewhat,
that's right. It's like the debate tonight. How many people are going to actually
that's a valid
watch the
point.
debate?
You know, because some people are like,
you agree with me. You heard that?
I agree. I don't want to take a stand, so I mean, kind of somewhat. Right. But on the other hand,
who's that an impression of? Anybody in particular?
A lot of people.
Someone you know?
No.
Let's tell who it is.
An elected official?
Sounds a little bit like Mick Dumke.
No, it's not Mick Dumke. It's somebody else who will go unmentioned. A good friend of Dennis's, I might say. Loser, that person. Anyway, all right, let's switch to tonight's debate. He knows who I'm talking about. Let's switch to tonight's debate. Will you be watching it, young man?
No.
Oh, come on.
What?
No. You're against the teachers and you're not going to watch the debate?
He's an Andrew Yang fan. He's not. He knows he's not going to miss anything.
No, it's for real.
$10,000.
12 people on 12 people? No,
Yeah,
I'm not watching 12 people who are going to wait 20 minutes to say, trying to get that key. It's like when I'm on this show, in the show, you try to say, what is that key thing I'm going to say? What is my hook? You know, it's just like being on this show. So you try to wait, and hopefully they throw your softball so you can knock it out of the park.
All right, here's a softball.
I ain't ready. I ain't on it. But you know what I'm saying, though, because this is the one I would love to know. If Bernie Sanders, we wish him the best of health. He may live to be, 100 years old.
Here, what do you get?
But if he dropped out, would it just close the deal for Elizabeth Warren? Dun, dun, dun.
Whoa, I hadn't thought of that. Hold on.
Dun, dun, dun,
Absolutely.
Dun, dun. And so other
but
people.
I don't want Bernie to drop out.
I was talking to a gentleman today, and this person likes your buddy Kamala Harris.
Oh, yeah. Hold on. Let me have a little more of that Kool-Aid.
I told him there's a guy named Sergio Mims.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Sergio Mims was boy, he was vicious in a good way. It's funny.
He ripped her.
Because remember, I forgot what Tulsi Gabbard said about Kamala, but she punched her and she's never recovered.
She has
She
never
took the
recovered.
punch from Tulsi Gabbard and never recovered.
Never recovered.
So this is
It was about locking up reefer users in California.
Reefer madness.
I think that's what the punch was.
Yep. Yeah. And that was a good punch.
It was a powerful punch.
It's a good punch. And so so everybody's like the Kamalas, they just trying to lay to see, okay, Biden's falling. Biden's going to peak out. He's not going to go up. I mean, unless he wins South Carolina.
Let me ask you this. In your humble opinion, Tulsi Gabbard hit her hard with the issue with her record, Kamala Harris's record as Attorney General of the state of California, in locking up people who were arrested for possession of reefer. And it was a very vulnerable position. Will you buy it if a politician says, I was wrong then?
That's what you're supposed to do. You got to. The trick is that you have to own it.
Own it.
You own it. You say, yes, I did lock up a lot of people. It was an era where a lot of folks were wanting to lock up folks, and the Black Caucus wanted to lock up folks. You know, I don't know how old you were, Chelsea. You probably was 10 years old, so you didn't know what was going on. I mean, she could have pounded her, but she wasn't ready for it. Who thought Tulsi Gabbard would punch her like that? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So right now, everybody's going to probably have kids' gloves, because the key about this debate, as the pundits say, I'm just regurgitating what the pundits say.
Uh-huh.
The Trump affair, or the Trump inquiry, is just taking all the air out the building. It really has. Mm-hmm. It really has. So like people like, is there election? When is it?
Yeah.
March, April? When is it? Well, I don't know what I'm saying. The Iowa caucuses, you know what I'm saying? So it's taking all the air out the building. So we'll see what happens. Cause so even for some of the undercard, if you will, candidates do well, is anybody gonna see it? Is anybody gonna care? You know
well, I will be watching, and
You
care,
will.
and tomorrow we'll be discussing it on the Ben Joravsky Show. But your point is a very good one, and that is the Trump investigation, the insanity of our president, not only in terms of his phone call to the Ukraine, not only in terms of the video that just emerged that was put together by some of his supporters, but in addition to all that, his foreign policy moves in Syria have just overwhelmed the presidential primary. And so really, it just crystallized what we pretty much know. It's that if you're against Donald Trump, you're going to vote for whoever emerges. And it really doesn't matter. You're just going to vote for that person because you're voting against Trump. And I hate to say this, but I'm going to make a concession to Rahm Emanuel. He made that point at the last debate. And while I disagreed with the larger point he was making, which is that we can then therefore ignore our base, I don't agree with him there. I do believe the driving force, he's absolutely correct, that the driving force in this 2020 race will be your attitude toward Donald Trump.
Oh, no, he's right. And the people who are on the margins or on the ledge, or I don't really know, should I vote for President Trump again, or should I vote for the Democratic? These people ain't watching the damn debate. You know, because most Americans probably have made up their freaking mind already. If you haven't.
So? About the president? About
who you gonna vote for?
Wait, so you're gonna vote for Andrew Yang?
No. I'm saying if Deputy Dog won Dog won the Democratic primary, Deputy Dog gets my vote.
All right, let me ask you this. I'm with you there. I vote for Deputy Dog would be a huge improvement over Donald John Trump.
That's right.
All right, let me ask you this. Right now, who are you leaning for? Are you leaning for Andrew Yang?
You know, it's just like when I freaked out to you. We were laughing on the phone last night. I was freaked out because Lori Lightfoot came in the room early this year, and because I didn't vote for her in the primary because I thought she wasn't going to win.
Who'd you vote for?
Preckwinkle, because I didn't want it'd be Daley, Chico, Preckwinkle, so I voted for Preckwinkle. So it was one of those deals. See, Matt Martin come in, I'm up here freaking out. Let me genuflect. I seen this dude on your show, and Mick and y'all. Okay,
the great Matt Martin.
See, when I love celebrity. Celebrity come out, I'm like, oh, celebrity. No. So the point is, where was I?
I don't know.
Well, let me say, you are a celebrity, Mark. We have Brianna. She weighed in on the YouTube live stream chat. Mark Sims is the best guest ever. Makes my day.
Wow, there you go. A lot of people.
You got fans?
In the mail. The check is in the mail.
You paid her?
Hell yeah.
I think the point you were making is, I don't remember the point.
No, it doesn't matter. It's just banter.
Okay.
The point is that no matter who wins the Democratic primary, I'm going to vote for him. Most Americans who are going to vote have made up their mind. The trick is to get the Democrats. People are like, man, I don't really like Trump. Well, why don't you vote him out?
Yeah.
People, they like, well, and like we kid on the phone last night. I hate to be overly dramatic, but this guy's got to go. He's really endangering the republic. And people, we've been so spoiled. We most of us haven't lived through a real crisis as Americans. We really haven't. You remember the Vietnam War? I was a little kid.
Right. He always likes to remind me that I'm older than him.
That's right.
He loves doing that,
but it's good though. But it's good because you remember the war. I just barely remember. It didn't mean anything to me. But people understand this is very serious. And for some people, those people in Michigan and these states who love Trump, they know. When Trump is gone, this country changes. It's like a country changed when Ronald Reagan became president.
Yeah.
And this era of Reaganomics and tricky, what's his name, Richard Nixon, is coming to an end. I was in Rolling Meadows last night, and I thought I was in the United Nations. Yeah. There's so many different people that I didn't see out there in Arlington Heights and Rolling Meadows. This is Cook County, so when you have to go. You want to go see a large number of European Americans, you have to go to the collar county sometime because the demographics is changing. Mm-hmm. It freaks a lot of Americans out. And so they know that this is it. I don't know what they're trying to preserve.
Yeah, I don't know what they're preserving either.
But Trump is the preservative. They're trying to preserve something, and they need to deal with it. America's going to keep going forward.
All right, I got Mark Sims in the studio. I have to ask you a LeBron James question. Dennis, allow me to ask a sports-related question, okay?
Time's ticking, buddy. Come on.
There's a political edge to this. I talked about this briefly with Maya one more time. It all began when the general manager of the Houston Rockets sent out a tweet supporting the protesters in Hong Kong. The reaction from the Chinese government was immediate. They were outraged. They were going to break up the contracts, putting at risk millions and millions of dollars of investment in the NBA in terms of sneaker deals, TV deals, etc., and so forth. The NBA responded immediately. The tweet was taken down, and the NBA was apologetic about it. Etc. and so forth. We moved forward. Yesterday, LeBron sent out a tweet chastising the general manager of the Houston Rockets for opining, saying he spoke too soon, didn't know what he was talking about. And, Mark, I think I said this before, and I know this will resonate with you. Muhammad Ali took a stand that exposed himself to a backlash that hurt his pocketbook. LeBron James is taking a stand to defend his pocketbook. Things have changed to a certain degree.
Yeah, but you got to understand, Muhammad Ali was following Elijah Muhammad, and that was, and if anybody knows anything about the Nation of Islam, or if you were in a quasi cult before, you would understand. You just go lockstep, and you willing to die or lose, or not fight for 3 years, and so it's much bigger than just. Yeah, you take a stand, and plus he was younger too. You know what I'm saying? That goes back to. Let me go to LeBron James. How old is LeBron now? 33.
He was born in.
Whatever.
I think he was born in '84, but don't quote me. Go ahead.
I know he's almost close to dinner.
34.
There you.
Wow, man.
Whoa, his birthday's the day before mine.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Now you're going to forget what you were about to say.
You damn skipping, getting old, man. The thing about it is that he's not a college graduate. I don't know if the Houston Rockets guy's a college graduate. I think Matt Martin is a college graduate. The original, Elijah Muhammad, that was a whole different era.
Yeah, he was following.
See, I remember Elijah Muhammad.
Yeah, he would. Yeah, he
barely.
You were not old enough for Elijah.
He was in
75.
I was in 7th grade
when he died.
Yeah. It's one of the things. The black Muslims was like, they don't eat pork. Family went to the Islam restaurant at the old Islam, the original one on 83rd and Cottage Grove, and I remember they had maple syrup and beef bacon. You couldn't eat pork.
Wow. Kidding. By the way, tangent within a tangent. Yeah. I was doing a story for the Reader way back when, want to say in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, about a funeral parlor in Bronzeville. I think it was Griffin was the name.
Oh, you go back.
I know, I'm old. Anyway, the man is taking me around his funeral parlor, and there on a shelf is an urn with Elijah Muhammad's ashes. I was like, wow, that was deep, man. And there was another urn with the ashes of Dawson, the powerhouse congressman, William Dawson from, I know. I was like, wow.
Well, somebody on Twitter was tell you that. See, you should have brought Matt over here. So you were born and raised in Chicago, right?
No, he's not from Chicago.
Kick me off and bring this young man on.
So all right,
his narrative.
We will bring Matt Martin on. He's sitting on deck, 47th Ward Alderman. We're going to ask him about questions about having to do with budgets and taxes and teacher strikes and tonight's debate. Marc Sims, tell folks where they can find your podcast and the name of your podcast.
No, just surf Marc Sims, MarcSims. Do Chicago, Marc Sims Chicago. It's just a few questions, and you're coming on tonight and tomorrow. Next week we're coming on.
We're talking about
Matt. You're coming on too. Dennis, you can come back anytime.
Okay. But not me. I can't. All right, that's Marc Sims. Matt Martin. A lot of M's on the Ben Joravsky Show today. We'll be right back with Matt Martin.
I should have Matt on. I got to put him on.
And she, in the midst of the horrors of the Civil War and the militias and all of the conflict that was going on in her country, she opened up her family farm to internally displaced people who were fleeing violence. It was predominantly women and children. And at one point in time, she had 90,000 people crammed into her family farm. And she was working to get them health care and get them food, to start, trying to plant gardens so they'd have things to eat, to take their children into some kind of a schooling setting. And when the jihadists, the al-Shabaab militia, showed up to demand that she vacate this home of hers and that she leave and let them be in charge, she said no. I mean, this incredible act of courage in the face of these, as she rightly said, young men. What have you done? What have you ever done to help anyone? Them standing there with their automatic weapons slung over their little, narrow, bony shoulders, but they were so lethal in what they could do.
Attention Chicago innovators and creators, 2019 Chicago Ideas Week is coming soon. October 12th through the 17th, this annual Ideas Festival is back, and it's the largest, most affordable Ideas Festival of its kind. They bring in hundreds of thought leaders from around the globe and some local to share ideas and spark action all across Chicago. To get a better idea of what to expect, here's a bit of audio from last year's Chicago Ideas Week with special guest and Chicago comedian Hannibal Buress.
The real reason I came home is just because I was traveling a lot anyway. I wasn't in New York that much, and I don't have a full-time job in New York. I work a lot, but I'm not in New York, so it was just like I don't need to be here anymore. And also I just wanted to work on different stuff here in Chicago. So I have this center that I'm working on the west side, Melvina Masterminds. It's going to be arts and then a tech program and after school programming for kids in the North Austin area. So just wanted to be back. There we go.
October 12th through the 17th, it's 2019 Chicago Ideas Week. Tickets go on sale to members on August 22nd and to general public September 10th. Once again, if you're an innovator or creator in the city of Chicago or even outside the city, you must join us for Chicago Ideas Week, October 12th through the 17th. For tickets and event information, head to chicagoideas.com. That's chicagoideas.com, and we hope to see you October 12th through the 17th. Today's Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you in part by Green Element Resale. It's a thrift shop located at 6241 North Broadway in Chicago, and people, it's the best thrift shop I've ever been to in my life, all right? I know they're sponsors, but I'm serious. Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. until 7 p.m. On Sundays, 12 until 7 p.m. You can get all kinds of things at Green Element Resale. In fact, I'm looking at their website right now, going through a few pictures here, and let me just say some of the things that I see here. We got a stuffed animal. Stuffed animal at Green Element Resale. Get it right now. I think it's a polar bear. Stuffed polar bear. That's awesome. Get it at Green Element Resale right now. GreenElementResale.com. Several books I'm seeing right now. We got some blankets. All kinds of stuff, all right, at Green Element Resale, 6241 North Broadway in Chicago, right between Devon and Granville. They got a big giant truck outside. It's Green Element Resale. Find more information at greenelementresale.com. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Matt Martin in the studio. My alderman of the 47th Ward, recently elected in a runoff. As I told him the last time, did not vote for him the first round, but I voted for you in the second round. Matt, is that good enough?
That is, and as I told you the last time, that's quite all right with me.
All right, I'm going to stop saying that again, but I always feel compelled to confess that. Do you have an update for me, D?
Just one quick update. Right now, the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page, we are one like away from our next caption contest, and we had a powwow over the weekend here. It is going to be a Alderman Ed Burke caption contest, all right? So as soon as we hit 2,100 likes, we will have that contest. Literally, we are at 2,099 likes. So if you're listening to this right now and you've yet to like the Ben Joravsky Show on Facebook, take the dive, all right? Jorav as in Victory, SKY, at Benny J Show. As soon as we hit 2,100 likes, we will post the picture and we will have a caption contest.
All right, very good. Look forward to the Ed Burke caption contest. All right, Matt, I told you I want to talk to you about taxes and budgets and potential school strike and tonight's mayoral debate. I got mayors on my mind. Tonight's presidential debate. But you came in talking about what you experienced today in Austin. So why don't you just take a moment to tell people what you saw today?
Sure. So one of the things that I campaigned on that's continues to be very important to me is talking about public safety and issues in a way that's holistic, that really incorporates the fact that we don't talk about root causes. Too often we just say, how many police officers are there? What are our clearance rates? And that's that. And it's more complicated than that. So there are two organizations that functionally do a similar thing. They identify individuals who are at a high risk of committing or being the victims of a gun crime. And then they take those individuals, do cognitive behavioral therapy, job training. They get paid for that. With the idea being that if you complete their program successfully, you're going to have a permanent, stable job. So one of these organizations, it's called READY. It's through the Heartland Alliance, and they have a number of different locations throughout the city, primarily on the west side, also on the south side, and I toured their Austin facility, spoke with several of their participant employees as well as their staff, and just had a fantastic time talking with them about the intersection of so many issues, so that we are acknowledging folks' humanity. If someone is being victimized by gun crime, perpetrating that, they're more than a statistic, they're more than a name, there's a story behind that. And when we're talking about how we want to reduce our incidents of crime, especially violent crime, we have to treat people as people. And part of that means if you've got trauma, we're going to deal with that. If you have issues around education, job training, we're going to deal with that. One thing that they don't deal with, and I think that it's a hot button topic now with the budget season underway, the real estate transfer tax, whether to what extent that needs to go to homelessness. They said that depending on how you calculate it, 17% to upwards of 60% of the folks that they serve, it's about 1,200 folks right now, are homeless. And so when we're talking about we want to take public safety seriously, well, you can't just say, well, things like homelessness are going to be on the back burner. And once we get out of this deficit mindset with regard to the budget, then and only then will we deal with it. We got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. So it was a really moving experience to talk with folks, and just really, I think, in that hour and a half or so meeting, touched upon most of the big issues that Chicago's facing.
When you said cognitive behavior therapy, what does that mean?
So it's essentially getting people to identify issues that they're having from a cognitive standpoint. Maybe there's trauma that they've experienced that creates certain triggers when they encounter problematic situations, and teaching folks to identify that, to also identify next steps, and then take those next steps. So one person gave an example where she was just out walking in the community, one of the staffers, and someone drove by, I think it was a participant, and he said, "Look, I got to talk with you. There's this guy down the street. He was using some derogatory language about my significant other. I find that problematic, and essentially I'm thinking about grabbing a gun and dealing with the situation that way. I need you," and there's like this acronym that I don't need to get into. It's like, "I need you to do CAD with me right here." And so they talked about this. She talked him down. He reaches a state of comfort, of equilibrium. He says, "Great, thanks." And he goes to the program later on that day to do his job training. So those are the sorts of things where in the aggregate, because we're not talking about millions of people here, right? We're talking about, at least according to the superintendent, anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 individuals. Like, okay, we know who many of them are, so let's start engaging with them in a really thoughtful way. We know what those next steps are. I think now's the time where city government needs to step in and make sure that these programs are adequately funded. Well,
this is a natural transition, I think, Matt, to talk about what some of the issues that are at stake with the negotiation between the teachers union and the city of Chicago, Mayor Lightfoot, the Board of Education. The teachers have raised these issues of more nurses, more social workers, more counselors in a public school, a contractual guarantee. And the response of so many people in the media has been, just take the money. The way I boil it down, shut up and take the money, and don't talk about these larger issues. I struggle with it, Matt. These are very exceedingly important issues. I'm not sure if a union negotiation is the best venue to deal with them, but I don't see any other venue where they're being taken seriously until the teachers raise them at the bargaining table with the threat of a strike. So I have a hard time believing that our leaders are being totally honest when they tell the teachers, "We'll deal with this stuff later, further down the road. Just sign this contract and stay in the classroom."
Yeah, so I have a lot of opinions about this. One is, if you even go to some of our suburban schools, they are able to bargain over things that in 1995, the state of Illinois stepped in and removed those very issues from the bargaining table for CPS and CTU, specifically class size. So if you go out to suburbs, whether it's Oak Park or Evanston or Highland Park, and you're touring schools, you may be thinking about moving there. You want to get a sense for the quality of these schools, and you see that their class sizes are routinely between 20 or 25 for a public school. That's something where that tells you as a parent of a prospective student, my child is likely to get that sort of one-on-one or small group attention that they need and that they deserve. Here, I mean, I think that it's a tale of two cities in some ways. In our ward, I talk with parents and educators who are bursting at the seams with us at the schools, but it's like, okay, we've got 30 kids in a kindergarten classroom, already too many, but let's figure out what we can do to keep it going from 35. And too often what folks have to do is they reach into their pocketbooks to be able to fundraise for those core positions. If you're in other parts of the city where you're lucky if you raise $2,000 as opposed to $200,000, what are you going to do? And so we've got documented evidence of class sizes that are 38, 40, 45, 48, and that's just not tenable. So if we're talking about what are the sorts of environments that we want our kids to have and that we want teachers to operate within so that they can provide the best education possible, this stuff's critical. And so with many of these issues, including social workers and nurses, as you mentioned, librarians, there's general agreement between CTU and CPS about what needs to happen. Like specifically, we need more people in there. And you've even had folks at CPS say, well, for our next year's budget, it accounts for most of the positions that you're talking about, but we're not going to put it in writing. And even though it's not quite apples to apples, I like to remind people about the police department. After the Laquan McDonald murder video came out, DOJ comes in, does this investigation, 165-page report saying soup to nuts, all the things that are a problem. And by the way, we've had a lot of folks come in recently with CPS saying things like special ed program needs help. State took that over. Issues around sexual misconduct by certain educators. Federal government steps in. So going back to CPD, you didn't have a situation where you look at that report and then Mayor Emanuel and Superintendent McCarthy, and then Eddie Johnson more recently said, okay, we got it from here, no need. Like, no, we understood that because it's a system, it's about more than one or two or three individuals, we need to have a systemic fix in the form of a consent decree there, a contract, a legally enforceable contract. And when we have the sort of pervasive problems here at CPS that are not new, they've been documented for generations, that we see the sort of disparities that are untenable for the vast majority of Chicagoans, that's where I say, look, why can't we put this in a contract? And then when you hear about some glimmers of hope about CPS saying, okay, well, we'll be amenable to CTU's position about potentially ramping up. So saying if there's a pipeline issue, as there does seem to be in terms of certain of those positions, well, how about we scale that in over time? So we're not going to get 100% of everything that we all agree is necessary right away, but we'll ramp up to that. I mean, that's where the conversation is evolving, and I think that's why you saw the Sun-Times article, I believe it was yesterday evening, talk about how a majority of Chicagoans support teachers. I see you holding that up right now. If they feel that they need to ultimately go out on strike this week.
Well, this and what just to clarify what Alderman Martin is talking about, the ramp up process. In other words, the teachers union is saying hire X amount of nurses right now, and the Board of Education is saying, and Lori Lightfoot is saying, we would like to hire those nurses, but the market is so tough right now, we can't just go out and hire, let's say 100 nurses, just throw that number out, 100 nurses, we can only find 20. So the deal they would cut would say ramp up. All right, you're obligated for 20 this year, 20 next year, 20 next year, until you get the 100, you meet your goal. That'll give you the time to find the qualified nurses that you need to fill all these vacancies. That's what he means by ramp up. And I think the union is open to that. Stacey Davis Gates has come into the studio and said as much. It just took a long time. I guess that's negotiations, Matt. It just took a long time to get the two of them on agreement on that ramp up. Let's see if they cut a deal before Thursday. You mentioned the poll. I was pleasantly surprised. You know where I come from. I'm with the teachers on this one. I agree 100% with them in terms of needing to hire more nurses, et cetera, and so forth. But I felt kind of lonely on the north side sometimes. Some of the people that came up to me were not with the teachers. What's your sense of how this issue plays out in the 47th Ward on the north side? You got to have your ear to the ground. You're an alderman.
Yeah, I try. So I think that for me, it's not unlike affordable housing, where if you use particular terms and when you start with talking with people about their own shared experiences, you'd be surprised how much common ground you can find. So if you start off by saying, okay, do you have any kids? Do Do your kids go to the local public school? What do you think about that school? Vast majority of parents will talk about how great their local public schools are in our neck of the woods. And you start to say, hey, you got a librarian? Yeah, we do have a librarian. How about class sizes? Yeah, they may be a little bit too high in some places, but generally 30 and under, okay. You talk with administrators, you say, what's one of the biggest challenges beyond just needing more money? They'll say, we need more case managers. We need more social workers, because too often, due to those inadequate numbers, we're having to do that job. And that's where I hear them and I say, okay, there's a lot of there to what you're reading about in the news. I think sometimes people are inclined to assume that what is being discussed publicly like that is just pure politics and it's angling for something. It's like, no, a lot of that really reflects what's going on in our specific ward. And while maybe we're at a comfortable place in some people's estimation with some of those metrics, that's not the case for everything. So another thing I'll say is our ward has the second highest number of current and former public school teachers of any ward in the entire city. So you walk around and you'll talk with those folks. They understand that stuff. They have that lived experience. Some of them work in the ward, many of them don't. And so they're able to talk with you about what they're dealing with schools in other parts of the city and how fortunate they feel to be able to send their kids to our local public schools, but frustrated that that isn't uniformly the case.
How do you know that the ward has the second highest number? I didn't know people were kept. I mean, a lot of former teachers in the 40s. Maybe that explains why it is basically a liberal ward. 47th ward. If you take a look at their voting trends, they vote for. You were the more liberal candidate in the runoff, and you won with what percent of the vote?
About 63.
About 60. Well, we'll up to 63. All right, now let's talk about taxes. If you're going to hire more nurses, if you're going to hire more social workers, it's going to cost money. And in addition to that, you have all the other obligations that the city of Chicago has, and there's a budget. You're going to have to vote on that budget within the next few weeks, maybe a month or so. What's your sense of where the city is going to go, where Mayor Lightfoot's going to go in terms of raising the money to pay all the bills?
So right now, I feel that there's a shared desire to find a more progressive route, and specifically one that does not include property tax hikes. Where I think the rubber's really going to hit the road is in two places. One is, what, if any, assistance is Springfield going to provide, specifically through a real estate transfer tax? Because I think most of the other things that Springfield would need to approve for us to do isn't going to happen in veto session. So that's one thing to keep an eye on. And then the second is, look, we've got a number of different ideas that I and a number of other members of the city council have proposed, more progressive revenue ideas that are still getting workshopped within the administration in terms of determining what their level of comfort is. So one thing that I'm going to be looking at very closely is we need to be dealing with this budget, not just in terms of plugging whatever that budget gap is, whether you want to say it's 838 or something else, and really see what are we setting ourselves up for in the coming years, because the next several years in terms of a pension ramp up for the municipal folks, laborers, fire, and police, that's going to generally go up another $1 billion between now and 2023. So I don't think we can talk about policies as being, okay, we're going to figure it out this year and then everything else is going to be rosy. That's not the case. So we need to talk about serious structural reform. So we've put out ideas like doing TIF surplusing on a routine basis every year. If you're not allocating TIF funds and just leaving them in this fund for some subsequent period, that needs to go. And half of that approximately goes to CPS. To your point earlier about how we're going to pay for some of this stuff, in addition to the several $100 million of additional money we're getting from the state. About a quarter of that TIF surplus goes back to the city into its corporate fund. Mm-hmm. You talk about things like pilot payment in lieu of taxes, so asking large universities, large hospital systems to pay, to make a payment that they otherwise would have been making but for their nonprofit status. So they're not paying much in the way of property taxes. Hey, kick in something here, because if the entire city's doing well, you're doing well. Other things like a corporate head tax, realizing that we need to be able to ask corporations who are doing really well, like these 50 or so corporate relocations that have occurred over the last 10 years. Can you kick in a little bit of money knowing how well many of you have done? We can talk about what form that takes, but I think that should be a big part of the conversation. And then finally, it's things around ride sharing. We know that the administration is really interested in both looking at things from a congestion standpoint and just a straight revenue standpoint. From a revenue standpoint, how about we make sure that it's more progressive so that if you want to, from the north side, take a car downtown by yourself, the fee that we're going to charge you is going to be higher than if you want a pool with several people. It's good for the environment. It's good for congestion. And I think, again, it's targeting folks who might be able to pay that extra dollar if that ends up what it's being. So we've got a lot of different options there. So one is making sure that there's a shared understanding of when you say all options are on the table, that we're going to treat it that way, and then be really transparent about what sort of money are we talking about. Because if they say, well, property taxes, we don't want to do it, but we need $50 million. Well, then we can start to say, hey, well, how about pilot? How about some of these other things? Let's figure out how we can calibrate it. Then we start to get a budget that I think reflects a lot of what all of us were campaigning on over this last cycle.
Pilot, that's intriguing. Payment in lieu of taxes.
That's right.
So what kind of payment, if it's not a tax, would it be?
It can take a number of forms. So a lot of places like Boston and Baltimore that have a lot of colleges, universities, hospitals, that's something that they do, as well as actually in the Southeast in a lot of places. So the payment can take different forms. It could be a payment that you're making on an annual basis, a payment that you make over a several year period, but it's a contract. And it's something that really reflects the fact that we're providing a lot of support through city services, many of which are not getting compensated directly because we're not getting adequate property tax revenue. So if you're the University of Chicago, if you're Rush, if you're Northwestern University Medical Center, hey, I know that you go out in the community and you provide free and reduced cost services. That's fantastic. But I think maybe we'll scrutinize those numbers a little bit more and ask you if you can kick in.
So literally, it's just like, say, negotiate a deal with these institutions like the University of Chicago. All right, we need you to, the city could come to them and say, we want you to pay $20 million, just like a flat amount of money to the city's coffers that the city has to pay its bills.
Yeah, that's one form it could take, but that's something that a lot of other places do. It's not novel, but if we're talking about what are we going to do other than property tax increases, that's what many of my colleagues and we take very seriously. And so we've looked at other jurisdictions. We've looked at what we can do unilaterally as a city versus what Springfield needs to help us out with. And so, look, we know a lot of these options are going to upset some people look, we've got some shared sacrifice coming, and we need to be honest about that. But if we give people an impression that it's not business as usual, that we're being thoughtful, we're being responsive to their issues, that hopefully they can trust us more as council members and not view us as just some corrupt institution, but an institution that really has their best interests in mind, and that we care just as much about the city budget as we do about potholes and garbage collection.
Yeah, you're right. There would be some opposition. You hear that groaning and moaning. That's from the University of Chicago and Northwestern. That's just the very thought. I do know that is a very intriguing idea, and I know that in Evanston, you were a Northwestern grad. In Evanston, for years, there was a group of politicians who were always pointing out that Northwestern didn't pay property taxes, and it upset them. And Northwestern's reaction was, you would just be this dim little town that nobody would care about if it wasn't for us. So, shut up and take it. And that kind of struggle, that town gown conflict was there in Evanston. I don't know if they will ever reconcile it. I'll bet you we'd have a similar type reaction if the city got serious about a pilot program here.
Yeah, we know that there are hard conversations to be had there, and we know that different institutions have particular bottom lines. Cognizant of that, but so do Chicago voters, so do Chicago residents. I mean, I just came off a campaign where the biggest issue that people brought up was the cost of housing. If they owned, it was property taxes. If they rented, it was their rents that were going up, largely because their landlords had rising property taxes. So if we want to talk about making sure that anyone, especially folks who want to be a good neighbor, can find and keep a home anywhere in the city, then we're going to have to look beyond property taxes and start to ask people who have been doing well to be able to pay their fair share.
You mentioned the debate. One of the, you mentioned the election you just came out of. One of the intriguing prospects that you put out there, proposals, was a corporate income tax. Or it was just a city income tax. What's the likelihood of that happening? I don't know, anytime in the next 50,000 years?
I think we got a good chance in 25,000 years. I think it was one of a number of things that I had identified as, hey, if you don't like property taxes, this is something we could do. That specifically is something where I feel you can only institute if we're going to reduce our reliance on property taxes, because a number of large cities have some sort of income tax. Sometimes it's geared towards corporations, sometimes individuals, but those places have much lower property taxes. So it's not something that I was proposing or currently think would be good to put on top of our existing property taxes. But if we're going to take a look at, we're going to rethink the way that we bring in revenue in a systemic way, I think something like that should be part of the conversation, so that we have, for example, a federal progressive income tax, at least in theory. We don't have a federal property tax that's flat. And even though we've seen I guess statistics now showing that the top 400 people in the entire country have a lower effective tax rate than everybody else, and how problematic that is. There's still this idea, I think, that permeates our public consciousness, at least on the liberal side of things, which is as you do really well and you make a lot of money, we're going to ask that you kick in so that everyone else has the opportunity, especially those younger generations, to have the same opportunity as you. And so why can't we bring the same principles that we have at the federal level, and that hopefully by November of next year we're going to have at the state level, bring that down to the city level? Yeah, I think you're right that you have to connect that to a property tax break. It's just much the same way that the talk for the state in regards to a fair tax, where you raise the higher rate, maybe the way to get that through is to link that to a property tax cut or freeze of some sort, because I think there would just be a general resistance to raising tax, even if you're not being the person who gets hit with the tax, if you follow what I'm saying. Mm-hmm, I do. But if people say, oh, I'm getting a little property tax break, they may be supportive. All right, let's switch with the time we have left to national news. I know you're a student of politics. We have a debate tonight. And what do you want to hear from the Democratic candidates? I think one thing that's going to be really important is what we're going to do from a foreign policy standpoint, because I think you are starting to see how lucky we have been as a country to have relatively few foreign crises that we've had to help navigate. And so when it comes to something like Turkey and Syria and the Kurds, that is in many ways manufactured by the president himself in terms of the problem we find ourselves facing, we need to make sure that whoever our next commander-in-chief is going to be has a really sound and publicly vetted foreign policy approach, and that we are asking them like who their foreign policy advisors are, who they're asking a lot of advice from around those issues, in addition to domestic issues. Like a pet peeve of mine, I understand why politically you don't want to do this, is if you're a president, how many things are you really going to make a decision about on a day-to-day basis relative to all the myriad decisions that need to happen from a federal standpoint? So knowing who not just your running mate's going to be, but your different secretaries, the folks who are going to be running the commissions, that's hugely important. I mean, if we're talking about really a resurgence in antitrust, we need to know who's going to be running the DOJ and how committed they're going to be, not just to give a good speech about something, but really go to bat on that issue that I think is a generational issue from an economic standpoint. So while I don't want to get cute and say I just want to know who everyone's going to appoint, but I think we do need to have questions around what would you be looking for in a particular secretary, in a particular commissioner, to start to figure out who's going to help you execute these things. Because you see with someone like Trump, all too often it's the last person he chatted with, or on certain issues it's literally just Giuliani or someone at Fox News that he's spoken with. We need to know who the confidants are going to be with other people, so that when it comes to executing a very broad-based vision that someone has outlined, we have knowledge and comfort with that as voters. We were, I was talking about this with Marc Sims, the previous guest. Donald Trump's lunacy has sort of drowned everything else out on the national level. And day to day, there's more lunacy that comes from Donald Trump. I try to keep up on this show, but sometimes, when you have the 3-day weekend, 3 days off between shows, Matt, I'm like, wow, there's so much insanity, like that video yesterday, and just all the revelations about Giuliani and his contacts with Ukraine and the pressures they put on the Ukrainian prosecutors. It's just, and then of course the utter betrayal of the Kurds, which have completely changed the landscape in northeast Syria. And just think about it, Matt. One
pulling 50 soldiers or 100 soldiers from a corner of northeast Syria has led to bombings and airstrikes and invasions and death. It's just, it all happened just like that without any discussion. How can the Democrats maintain any, what is the word? Just any progress here in terms of their own, keeping the public to pay attention and getting the public to pay attention with them when Donald Trump just commands so much attention to his insanity?
I think, look, as we get closer to the caucuses and the primaries, I mean, we're naturally going to have a cycle where we're talking about this stuff minute by minute, hour by hour, as opposed to kind of these peaks and valleys that are informed by our debates. I've heard a lot of people who are smarter about national politics, and I say, look, like you need to be very sensitive and careful about how you attack Trump, because in some ways, when people just see what's going on and he doesn't have someone who he can pick a fight with and just like distract with this shiny object that is relatively meaningless, that's where he sinks himself. I think that it's got to be really hard for one of those candidates, especially if you're not in the top 3 or 4, to say how, to the extent I buy into that, how do I still get press for myself? I mean, that's a big challenge, but part of that's a good ground game. Part of that's being really thoughtful about creating and executing a strategy that can take that stuff into account, where as stuff becomes crazier, as Trump's going to be grasping at straws, figuring out what he can do to shift the narrative, that the media is going to continue to cover that. And so if you can set and exceed expectations in a reasonable way, that's, I think, how you elevate yourself, in addition to just being really consistent and really sound and really authentic on the issues that are important to you and that are important to the country.
I can't remember. I probably have asked you this question, so I apologize for not remembering. Have you endorsed one of the presidential candidates? Are you leaning toward one of them? I just can't remember the answer.
So I'm supportive of Elizabeth Warren.
That's okay.
I find her issues around ethics, including her campaign finance announcement today involving the big tech companies and not taking large donations from them, the way that she's really eschewed large donors and instead spending more time talking with everyday folks. I find that very refreshing. It's really smart. The fact that she really identified Iowa as a place to devote resources to and is paying her staffers a living wage, I think is great. But look, just like with my race, we had a number of strong candidates. We also have a tremendous field right now from the Democratic standpoint. So there are a number of folks who I would be happy, I mean, really everybody, I would be happy to cast a ballot for in opposition to our current president. So I'm looking forward to seeing how she and a number of other folks deal with these really challenging situations.
I think I would, what was the line that Terry Cosgrove used?
Put on your big boy pants.
Yeah, he says put on your big boy. Terry Cosgrove, personal PAC, said he would vote for a flea over Donald Trump. Anybody, anything, over Donald Trump. So I would say any of the candidates who are going to be on the stage tonight, I personally, just me speaking, Matt Martin, would vote for any one of them over Donald Trump. All right, Matt Martin, Alderman of the 47th Ward, thank you so much. Anything you want to leave folks with, like any events coming up or anything you want to tell people that they should know about that you want to promote in this last minute or so?
So 2 things are happening maybe right at this minute in City Council in the zoning committee. One is cannabis, figuring out what we're going to do come January 1st, 2020 about who's going to be selling cannabis and where, especially the social equity piece of folks who have been disproportionately impacted by those policies, who gets to have a seat at that table and be able to drive revenue. Second thing, more minor, electric vehicles. There's an ordinance that Alderman Brendan Riley introduced that said for mid-size and large new developments that there's going to be a floor in terms of charging stations, or at least wiring that would provide capabilities for that. So if you care about environmental justice, things like that, they're modest, but they're hugely meaningful, because you can't have a Leaf or a Tesla or a Bolt and not have anywhere to plug it in. So those are small things, but really meaningful.
And one thing I didn't mention was the casino. Today's Sun-Times had a story about a proposal that maybe the city would actually own the casino and then farm out on a contractual basis the operation to a promoter. What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's a really compelling proposal because right now the amount of taxation that would be levied not just by the city but by the state on a potential casino operator, as the study indicated that the administration put out, is probably a no-go for folks. And so if we're talking about ways in which we can really bring in revenue in ways that reflect our values and help us address some of these systemic issues, I think it's really fair to be able to say, look, what are we going to do so that the city and the state get the revenue that they need, but that it's actually a feasible idea and it's not just a pipe dream.
Yeah, well, I'll be watching that one. I'll make a deal right now. I'll tell the people who own our parking meters, I'll let you control the revenue from the casino if you give us back the parking meter revenue. How about that deal, huh? Yeah, I think that would work into the favor of Chicago. All right, Matt Martin, Alderman of the 47th Ward, thank you so much. I also want to thank Marc Sims, my guest in the 2 o'clock hour. And, of course, Maya was here at 1:30. The man, the myth, the legend behind the board,
Senator,
the pride and joy of Alton,
Secretary of
Illinois.
State, and obviously,
me. I'm sorry. I'm just watching this interview with Hillary Clinton and Lori Lightfoot. You know, you guys are saying bad things. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, he loves that interview. Maya was all over that one. Dr. D, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois.
And also, hey, we have reached 2,100 likes on the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page. Shout out to Greg. I really don't like that interview. Shout out to Greg. He became like number 2,100. Greg, you are awesome. And because of you, we are going to have our caption contest right now posted on the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page. Here, I got to show Ben the picture real quick. Is our caption contest picture. Get a look at it. Ed Burke talking to Donald
Trump, man. Well, that was his lawyer. Donald Trump hired Ed Burke to handle this tax bill over
not Photoshop. Actual picture. Head over to the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page. Leave us your captions. We'll be reading them all throughout the week, and we'll announce our winners at the end of Friday's show. So thanks to everybody. 2,100.
All right, very good. And Matt Martin, I got to just say that picture it just shows you how much things have changed. That at some point in the recent history, a Chicago alderman thought it was, well, I don't know, a good idea or at least not a bad idea to take on Donald Trump as his client. Think about how reviled Donald Trump is in the city of Chicago right now, particularly in areas like the 14th Ward on the southwest side where there's so many Mexican-American voters and all the nasty, mean, bigoted things that Donald Trump has said about Mexicans. And just to think how we've changed, transformed. I'm going to try to end the show being positive for once, Matt, that it's not considered a good idea to be photographed with Donald John Trump or to accept his money as their property tax lawyer. So that's progress, isn't it?
Huge amount of progress.
All right, I'll take that. Anyway, Dr. D, great job. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow, everybody.
And remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows and Benny J bonus interviews at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, chicago.suntimes.com, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you download podcasts. Downloaders, you know we live stream this show, right? It's true. Tuesdays through Fridays, 1 until 3 p.m. Central Time at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel, and on Facebook at Benny J Show. BENNY, the letter J Show, JORA, V as in victory, SKY.
That's correct.